The Star Wars prequels don't just show us how Anakin Skywalker went from heroic Jedi Knight to Dark Lord of the Sith, they also introduce a galaxy that hasn't yet been consumed by the Empire. How exactly did the Republic transform into the Empire? What happened to all those clone troopers? The movies and shows have never paid much attention to this part of the timeline, so let's break down how the various Star Wars comics and novels have fleshed out the early days of the Empire.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power!
What do you do after betraying the Jedi Order, your wife, and your best friend, and burning to a crisp in a river of lava? For Anakin Skywalker, the birth of the Empire means getting used to the idea of being more machine than man.
Twisted and evil.
It's not an easy transition. Anakin's early days as a Sith Lord are chronicled in the 2005 novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader. Set just after the events of Episode 3, the book shows Vader hunting rogue Jedi and relearning how to use the Force in his clunky cybernetic body. The novel is no longer considered to be part of the official canon, but it still offers a rare and valuable glimpse inside the mind of this inscrutable villain. When it comes to the official timeline, Vader's early days are explored in Marvel's Darth Vader: Dark Lord of the Sith. This series also opened shortly after Episode 3, filling in a number of gaps in Anakin's story along the way. Among other things, the series reveals how Vader acquires his red lightsaber, and why Sith sabers are red in the first place. TLDR, they torture the kyber crystals that power the sabers to make them more dangerous.
If you will not fight, then you will meet your destiny.
Most important of all, the Marvel series shows us the inner turmoil plaguing Vader as he works to extinguish all traces of Anakin Skywalker. We see Vader's own mental self-image, a swirling mass of red and black energy hovering above a lava field, constantly striking out at the glowing blue butterflies that represent the good still within.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
As we learn in Episode 3, the entire Clone Wars conflict is really just a complicated ruse Palpatine uses to consolidate his power and take the Jedi off the table. But even though we see the events of Order 66 and the destruction of the Jedi Temple, Palpatine never quite succeeds in extinguishing the light of the Jedi. Many of these post-Episode 3 stories show Vader and his master hunting down the surviving Jedi and eliminating these threats to the Empire. Vader's first kill is a forgotten Jedi master named Kirak Infila, whose green lightsaber is twisted and tortured to become the iconic red blade we know so well. Vader also battles former Jedi librarian Jocasta Nu, who comes out of hiding to prevent a list of Force-sensitive children from falling into Palpatine's hands. If that rings a bell, this list is also a major part of the plot of the 2019 video game Jedi Fallen Order. As powerful as Vader is once he grows used to his cumbersome new armor, exterminating the Jedi is too big a job for any one Sith Lord. That's why Vader and Palpatine form the Sith Inquisitorius. These fanatical warriors help Vader hunt down the surviving Jedi, and they do their job well. This is another place where Marvel's Darth Vader comics fill in the gaps, showing how Vader first assembled his crew and explaining why a Sith Lord needs minions in the first place. It's mostly fallen on the Star Wars novels and comics to explore how Jedi like Ahsoka Tano and Kanan Jarrus survived and stayed hidden during the years between Revenge of the Sith and the original trilogy. Dark Horse's Star Wars Dark Times introduced another surviving Jedi named Das Chenier, though Das has yet to put in an appearance in the new Disney timeline.
We take great pride in our combat education and training programs. This group was created about 5 years ago.
The clone troopers may have been the backbone of the Grand Army of the Republic, but the new Emperor doesn't waste much time before phasing out the clones in favor of a new Imperial force made of conscripted soldiers. But why get rid of the clones? Why put an elite, highly trained fighting force in mothballs in favor of a new generation of grunts who clearly can't hit the broadside of a space barn? In the classic Legends timeline, Palpatine is shown to be fearful of the potential of a clone uprising. 2005 Star Wars Battlefront 2 shows a clone rebellion on Kamino, revealing the Kaminoans created a series of backup clone troopers loyal only to them as a failsafe. Palpatine feared that if one clone of Jango Fett could turn against the Empire, others might follow. It doesn't help that 2010's The Force Unleashed 2 shows Jedi hero Starkiller crashing a massive ship onto the clone facilities on Kamino, bringing an end to the clone troopers once and for all. In the new Disney timeline, however, the explanation is more straightforward. Because Jango Fett died at the beginning of the Clone Wars, the scientists on Kamino can only make so many clones before they run out of the raw genetic material they need. The production of new clone troopers ends after the war, and those clones who do survive the end suffer from accelerated aging. Palpatine has to get new bodies from somewhere, and he opts to use propaganda to fill his ranks with Imperial Academy recruits, rather than order another expensive batch of clones. It's the same reason the Empire doesn't put hyperdrives or shields in TIE fighters. They're all about cheap, disposable labor. The clones aren't phased out overnight. Stories like Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith show clone troopers carrying out the Emperor's will months and even years after the events of Episode 3. But over time, the clones age out of the army and are replaced by younger, less skilled soldiers. Some clones even come to regret their part in Order 66, joining with Captain Rex and defecting to the rebellion. Maybe Palpatine was right to fear a clone uprising after all. Palpatine's vision for the Empire was to maintain order and control using fear to keep rebellious systems in line.
That's impossible. How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy?
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories.
If Palpatine had one goal apart from exterminating the remaining Jedi, it was to finish constructing the Death Star and solidify his grip on a terrified galaxy. We know from the movies that Palpatine had designs for the Death Star at least as far back as the beginning of the Clone Wars. So why did it take over 20 years for that battle station to be completed? That's another question the comics and novels have set out to answer. Thanks to Catalyst, a Rogue One novel, and various reference books, we have a better idea of the turmoil surrounding the construction of the Death Star. Not only does it take an awful lot of raw materials and manpower building a moon-sized space station, the design for the Death Star's planet-shattering super laser weapon was never finalized. The ancient Sith couldn't crack the code, and even the Geonosians didn't finish the job before handing the schematics over to Count Dooku. It falls on the brilliant Galen Erso to complete Palpatine's grand vision, and we know how that turned out.
You'll need the plans.
Ironically, by the time Palpatine finally has his Doomsday weapon, it's already too late to quash the rebellion. Even before Palpatine officially crowned himself Emperor of the Galactic Empire, there were freedom fighters working to stop his rise to power. The early origins of what we know as the Rebel Alliance can be seen in episodes of the Clone Wars, and in a deleted subplot in Revenge of the Sith. But if you want the full story on the origins of the rebellion, you have to turn to books like Star Wars Ahsoka and Star Wars Tarkin. Early on, the Rebels are less a true alliance than a group of independent cells all fighting for the same goal. Picture characters like Saw Gerrera and his partisans, and Enfys Nest and her Cloud Riders. A surviving Jedi named Baron Farr even orchestrates a war between Mon Cala and the Empire, rightly predicting that Mon Cala's ships and resources will be essential to the growing rebellion. It's only through the ongoing efforts of Imperial senators like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma that these scattered freedom fighters start to come together as a unified force. According to the official Star Wars timeline, the Rebel Alliance as we know it doesn't truly come into being until 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, or 17 years after the Empire's creation. Over time, Palpatine begins to recognize these rebels as a real threat, and not just isolated pockets of resistance. He comes to rely on battle-hardened commanders like Grand Moff Tarkin and Grand Admiral Thrawn to enforce his will and score key military victories across the galaxy. Star Wars Tarkin and Star Wars Thrawn reveal more about how these two men rose through the ranks of the Empire and became every bit as feared as Darth Vader himself. And that's what we know about the glory